We're going to try to have a different conversation than you and I usually have to have with people in journalism. And here's how I want to start. I'm sort of doing what Ted Koppel does. I always admired the way Ted Koppel did interviews because he only prepared one question.
And then just went from there.
Yes. So here's my one question that's totally prepared. On March 15th, you sent me an email at about 11 o'clock at night with a link to a post you had written called Newspapers and Thinking the Unthinkable. Mm-hmm. And the last time I looked, this post had 1,100 links to it.
Something like that, yes.
Which is, for anybody who's a blogger knows, a very difficult feat to get that many inbound links to one single post. And when you sent me that email at about 11 o'clock at night, you said, I'm becoming obsessed. Yes. What obsession was this, and why were you obsessed? Tell me about it.
The obsession was really what I was trying to do in that post was to stop talking about it, which is to say the conversation about the newspapers and the internet had been going on. I felt like I was late to the party in '93 because Brad Templeton had already launched Clarinet, and everybody who looked at the internet in '93 was like, oh, this is going to be a big problem for newspapers. And it had taken, to my astonishment, it had taken 20 years from the launch of Clarinet to the current conversation. And what I was obsessed with at the time was trying to say something that people inside newspapers could hear. And I'll tell you why. Two conversations, both with good friends. One, a friend of mine who actually, both people who work at the New York Times, one, someone who said, you know, at the end of 2005, we were sitting around at a Christmas party, and she said, you know, it's only in this year that people in the Times have realized that we are in a dying industry. And that hit me like a ton of bricks because, as I said, I felt like everybody I was talking to in '93 knew that, but we were all on Usenet and nobody in the newspapers were listening to us. And I thought, how can it have taken so long? So I filed that thought away, and then in the beginning part of 2009, I was riding back from a bar mitzvah in Connecticut, a friend's son, with two Times reporters, and I asked them what Plan B was. And neither of them had Plan B, and one of them said, oh, I just hate it when stuff changes. And I thought, you know, I have to write something, because I've been writing stuff for years, everybody's been writing stuff for years that other people who are web-focused get. I thought, I have to write something that people inside newspapers can hear. And so what I was obsessed with was, can I express enough of the history of the interaction between print and the internet as alternate modes of distributing information that people inside the papers are willing to internalize as something that's happening. And in a way, the kind of secret axle of that piece is it's a little observation in there, but what I saw happen in newspapers is that everybody who said, hey, look what's going on in the outside world. Like, people are sharing stuff, and they're, you know, this is changing the economics of newspapers. All kinds of people are participating. Those people were treated as if they were crazy. And all they were doing was noticing what was going on and mentioning it to their bosses. Whereas the people who came in and said, any minute now, people are going to go back to consuming the way they've consumed. Or any minute now, the newspaper model can be trivially updated to the web and we'll all be fine. Those people were treated as if they were completely rational. Normal, absolutely. Right? Not a shred of evidence that what they were proposing was happening. And in a way, what I was trying to do in that piece, and what you know, again, what I was obsessed with was, can I write something that flips that bit? And it seems to have worked to some degree. I think in part because, unknown to me, there was enough other change as I was working on the essay going on. So without all meaning to, I happened to hit a news peg, which was I think the Denver paper, or the Colorado paper,
Rocky Mountain News.
I think went.
Yeah.
I posted that on a Friday maybe, and I think it went away on the following Monday. And so all of a sudden the context appeared to have that conversation.
But it could have been any time since 1993.
It could have been, and well, not only could it have been any time since 1993, I'd gone back and written something, reread something I'd written in '96, in which I said, you know what's really going to get messed up inside newspapers? The classified advertising business. eBay didn't exist then. Craigslist certainly didn't exist then. Google didn't exist then. I was extrapolating from Lycos and Excite. Right? But I looked at search engines and I said, wow, classified doesn't make any sense in print. It's going to go online. So nothing that I wrote in the newspapers piece, there was nothing novel in there. Everything that was in there had been said back when years began with a 1.
Sure.
There was something about packaging it, and also I think the willingness of the reference audience, which is to say the piece was written for people inside newspapers, the willingness of the reference audience to hear it.
Right.
And that was a, you know, I mean, one of the things, you know, to this 1,000 inbound links business, I think one of the things that happened in spring of this year is that newspapers became post-inevitable. Right? There was a period, most of my life online, where it was inevitable that newspapers would adapt to the new medium, and they would deploy it in some way that would ensure their continued vitality with relative continuity of management style and technique and organizational model and so forth. And it was only in this spring that the inevitability of that scenario started to come into question.
In other words, people actually started to think, we could lose this.
That's right, and it could be replaced by something that looks so dramatically different that we can't even make the argument that there was continuity here.
Right. So here's one explanation for this phenomena that I've tried to get across to people in this industry, because I talk to these people all the time, and I have for a long time.
Right.
And I study how they think. I named my blog for that. That's why I call my blog Press Think.
Press Think, right.
Because it's about that. It's about the sort of dominant mentality in the professional press. And in the 1970s and 80s, a group of social scientists went into newsrooms and they studied how journalists work. These were not people who were creatures of the newsroom.
Right.
So Herbert Gans, who was a great sociologist, right, at Columbia, went into Time, Newsweek, CBS, and NBC, and he studied how people there make decisions. Gay Tuckman, another sociologist, went to a metropolitan newspaper and studied how the people there decide what's news. And they created this literature, which I call the sociology of the newsroom, because that's what it is, which is about how journalists decide what's news. And the titles of the books reflect the perspective: making news, manufacturing the news, deciding what's news, right? And in these books, they make a lot of different observations, but one observation they all make in common is that if you look at the way journalists make decisions, many times the explanation for why they're doing it that way is not because this is the best way, this is the only way, this is the inevitable way, this is the journalistic way, but simply because this is what the production routine of a newspaper demands, or of a broadcast made daily demands. And what happens is that as they begin to accommodate themselves to a production routine, it becomes naturalized, and they think of those decisions not as what the production routine demands, but as
how it is.
How it really is, right? How the journalism is. Okay, so if many of the things that they do and many of the ideas that they absorb are in fact artifacts of the production routine, what happens when that production routine changes?
Right.